Today, we're looking at Diamine Indigo. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, Diamine Indigo is a turquoise ink, which was slightly surprising as a color. I sort of expected it to be blue. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I put the ink into a different pen for a day. I then put it into my first fountain pen ever, a Cross Bailey, with a medium nib to take my notes for this video. Now, before we look at the writing samples, let's look at the sciencey bits. Up first is the chromatography. And I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and put it into water immediately for 10 to 15 seconds. And what I see is really a very, very light blue, a much darker blue at the top, and then this kind of cool highlighter blue across the top here. So this is really nice as a color. It's really complex. Now the one on the right I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. And we see largely the same thing. Looking top down, we see much more of that highlighter blue at the top. We see some of these light blues, a little purpley, but the line on the bottom is much more pronounced and there, which makes me feel there may be a little bit of hold on for this. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard might it be to clean out of your pen? I let the smear dry for 3 days to see. Looking at the highlighter, it largely did pretty well, which is good and bad in its own ways, but this did pretty well when I look at it. It does spread out, it does become about a medium from that extra fine. I can completely read it, which makes me feel safe in a note-taking situation. Now, I said because I was thinking about that chromatography where it looks like there's some hold on. When we look at the water, we see it lifts a lot of the ink off. It sees that there's a lot left behind, but there is a very light area right by the H, which makes me feel like water might be all that's needed to get this out of your pen. If it wasn't, pen flush is certainly the last step that you would need to be able to take. You see that in the pen flush, with only 30 seconds on the paper, we start to see some of the white of the paper coming through quite clearly. I can even see some of the dots from the Rhodia pad. That's as far as I would go to clean this from your pen. But if you went to bleach, it would go very quickly. It obliterates it. It doesn't stand a chance. Now, as far as flow, for the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Diamine Indigo has a viscosity of 2.15, making it normal. It's on the low end of normal, but absolutely normal. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done with the extra fine and medium nib on Clairefontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. For the inks I've tested, I've found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Diamine Indigo has an average dry time of 15 seconds, making it normal, but it's also very close as a vicinity to the viscosity on these bell curves, which makes it a good standardizing ink to test out some new pens. Now, let's look at the writing samples. I picked this ink up in sample form. And to keep my writing sample consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at Clairefontaine. We have no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen. It does offer little bits of shade, in that it gives some slightly darker areas, like the top stem of the D is a little darker than the rest of the D. The N is darker than the D it goes into. The I is dark and it gets light into the G, so it gives some nice shading with the 1.1. The same exact tone that we got there, we get with the extra fine. No feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade. 9 seconds to dry. So we had no shade with the 1.1, which is a little disappointing. I was hoping for it, but it didn't happen. But we came to the medium. It had no feather, spread, halo, sheen. It did offer little bits of shading. The K in quick is darker than the rest of quick. Brown is a light tone the whole way. Fox is light and then gets dark. Over goes from light to dark to light to dark, so it's very nice there. It's just a dusty blue, a dusty light blue. 14 seconds to dry with the medium. The scrubby for the extra fine showed us no color variation. The scrubby for the medium showed us some. Now that's what we got in a writing sample, and the smear test says you could likely recover this if you did smear while you were writing. So Tomoe River. Tomoe River has no bleeding. It has ghosting. It is Tomoe River. It does ghost. The 1.1. Fix that some. The 1.1. No feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. Just a dusty blue. The extra fine has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade. It took 16 seconds to dry. The medium had no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade. 22 seconds to dry. Very consistent color throughout the writing. Very consistent dusty blue. Just dusty blue is not my thing. Scrubby for both show no color variation. We didn't get any. The smear test, I don't think you could recover it because you wrote on Tomoe River paper. So Rhodia, no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 had no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and it had no shade. There was a little bit with the Clairefontaine. There's none here. Same exact tone with the extra fine. No feather, spread, halo, sheen. There is little bits of shading. The starts light and gets dark. Quick starts light and gets dark. Brown is a nice solid tone, and Fox goes from light to dark. So we do get some nice shading with the extra fine. It took 11 seconds to dry. The medium, no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and no shade. It flipped roles from what it did with the Clairefontaine, where we got none with the extra fine and a little bit with the medium. Here we have no shading with this medium. It took 15 seconds to dry. When we look at the scrubby of the extra fine, we see a little color variation, far left to far right in the scrubby. The medium shows us none. That's exactly what we got. We got a little color variation and none. And the smear test, you could likely recover if you smeared while you were writing. So White Lines paper. White Lines paper did not like this ink, but there's a lot of inks that this paper doesn't particularly like. There's a lot of bleed spots, it's a lot of spotting through, to the point you cannot use the back of the page. It does not touch the page underneath. All of that bleeding led to a lot of halo, even with the extra fine. The 1.1 has spread, it has feathers. The feathers are all tiny and all over, they're consistent. It's not nice there. It has no halo, sheen, or shade. The extra fine, slightly lighter tone than the 1.1 or the medium when we get to it. The extra fine has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and no shade. It only took a second to dry. The medium, again, darker tone, back to what we saw with the 1.1. The medium had no spread, but it's got little feathers around in some of the areas where the ink is a little heavier. Like the K in quick has a little bit of feathering on it. The bottom loop of the G has a little bit of feathering on it. The PS in jumps, a little bit of feathering on it. Not distracting, not a problem if this is the only side of the page that you're worried about. No halo, no sheen, and no shade. No focus. There we go. 2 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation. We didn't get any color variation, and the smear test, you could recover it if you did smear while you were writing. So Strathmore writing paper. Strathmore writing paper gave us no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 gave no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade, and an uninteresting color. It's really blah there with the 1.1. It's a little nicer tone when we see the extra fine. I don't like this ink on this paper. I don't like what the tone did with the color. The extra fine has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade. It only took 3 seconds to dry. The medium has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade. It is a slightly darker tone than we got with the extra fine. It only took 7 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation. We didn't get any. And the smear test says if you smeared it, you could recover this. So P. Berger paper. Now this is a student grade paper. It's French rule. It's very thin. The backside's not ruled, so I'm expecting you're not supposed to really use the backside.
tons of bleed spots. It did not touch the page underneath. It did not, you could not use the back of the page. While it's not really ghosting, there's so much bleed, you can count on not being able to do much with this. The 1.1, it has feathering like crazy. It's blurry, it's gross, it's spread, it has no halo, no sheen, no shade. The extra fine, same tone as the 1.1. No spread, but it has some feathering. It has little feathering all over it. The has tons of little feathers all over. Lazy, little feathers all over. Quick, little feathers all over it. 1 second to dry. So it's got that. The medium, same tone as the extra fine, just thicker lines, and it spreads, makes the lines look even thicker. It feathers, it's gross, it's tiny feathering all over. A couple of the words, to me in person, look a little blurry. On camera, they look clearer. Like the tone of the ink looks much more varied on camera than it does in person. So it has feathering, it has spread, it has no halo, no sheen, and no shade. It took 4 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both showed us no color variation. We didn't get any. And the smear test, you could recover this if you smeared while you were writing. And that is all that I have for the writing sample. Instead of finding inks that look like Diamine's Indigo, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. Now, there's not a lot of grays that I like, but this particular one I do. Noodler's Lexington Gray is a very nice gray ink. It's got quite a bit of permanence, but I think this gray with this blue, it's a very professional combination. Before I give my opinion on this ink, I would ask, if you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if it's your first time here, I would invite you to subscribe. So what do I think of Diamine's Indigo? It was a bit lighter than I was expecting, which left me kind of disappointed. I was expecting more blue than turquoise, but quite a bit turquoise. And the thing is I don't care for inks with dusty tones, but if you like an ink with a dusty tone, this is a great dusty blue. Thanks for watching.